Angeline Era. Despite what you saw here, this game isn't what you think. Angeline Era is the latest non-linear action-adventure title coming from the minds at Analgesic Productions. If that indie studio sounds familiar, they are the creators of Anodyne 1 and 2, so they have experience under their belts. I've known about them for some time, but I never really felt like their games were for me, until I saw Angeline Era. The dev team utilizes an old archaic battle system and refined it into something fresh, which I find interesting. And then later, I was able to get a review key from them. So I gotta say thank you to the developers for that. Now, walk with me. I want to give you a small sample of the experience I had in this wonderful game. These are travel minigames that will pop up every time you find a new level, and they vary in length. The goal is to get through before the time is up, otherwise you have to start over. You can dodge obstacles in one of 4 directions, and you can attack enemies or blockades. This is the gate to the sea. Before I moved forward, I had to make sure all my equipment was in order. For the main weapons, I'm allowed to have 2, one being a basic sword and the other one being any alternative that I want. My alternative weapon will be a rapier. It's been my go-to because I can lunge at enemies, it's that simple. The player character also has access to a gun, which can have an attachment for it. The one I have is called Blast Fire. The attachment causes an explosion when enemies are in close range. The artifacts that I will use will be a tactical cube, a proximity mine, and bubble hop. And honestly, that last one won't be used at all. And then the last thing I do is eat, which gives bonus health. Moving forward, I get locked into a fight room. The only way to move past it is if you defeat a specific number of enemies or all of them. There are monsters I have to jump to hit the weak points, and other ones where I need to make sure I don't touch the spikes. At the time, I thought it would be the better idea to defeat them all because I wanted more money, but I took extra damage, so I don't think it's worth it. After finding some pocket change on the side, I start scaling the cliffside. These monsters that are shooting projectiles can be annoying, but these ones aren't so bad. After scaling the cliffside, I take a tumble. Falling into a pit doesn't really punish the player that much. At most, you will lose a little bit of HP. In hindsight, I actually could have used the bubble hop to save myself. In the second fight room, these enemies that shoot projectiles were extremely annoying because they shoot them rapidly. I do make it through with the help of the tactical cube, but I took a lot of damage. The third fight room almost took me out completely with a specific set of enemies, but fortunately I was able to get by using the gun and well-timed jumps to dodge most attacks. The unfortunate part is, I died in the fourth room. The intention was to kill the spitting enemies because they pissed me off so much, but unfortunately I still died. I did try again immediately after, but I died in the same room. Because I ran out of food, I went out and got some so I could keep trying. Getting back to the point where I died, I switch up my setup and make liberal use of the Aerodense device. This artifact slows down projectiles, and given what I've dealt with, it makes sense, right? I even make sure to take minimal damage. I mean, really, it makes you think, why didn't I just do this before? And honestly, that's just because I wasn't thinking. It happens to the best of us. I also use Iron Body, which makes me slower, but I'm immune to damage. So doing this with the Aerodense device, it makes things a lot easier, but I use a lot of resources. I even make quick work of the room I died in. The fifth room is unique in the fact that you have to hit a specific marked target 5 times to move on. You don't have to clear the enemies in the room, but it makes it easier. The sixth and final room has monsters that only appear if you walk over them. Otherwise, this room isn't so difficult at all. In fact, the previous rooms were a lot more annoying to deal with. The gate to the sea level only gave me a hard time when it used the enemies as shot projectiles fast and often. This was still a good level with awesome music. However, because it didn't end with a boss fight, I'm gonna show you what that's like at least. Caitlyn Morrow. This fight took place early on in my playthrough. It's due to that I don't have as many tools for combat as I did in the level that I showed you. Caitlyn will try to bump into you, jump at you leaving a trail of fire on the ground. She will use a gun, and she will litter spiked plants on the field. Like Tetsuya, Caitlyn is a trained warrior, so she can only be hurt when she stops moving. Otherwise, you will take damage. Using the gun might be ideal if you can't reach her, but you see a small opening. Initially, I thought I would beat Caitlyn on my first try, but I didn't realize soon enough that I needed to wait for her to stop moving before I attack her. So that one's on me. The second time, I ate beforehand, giving me extra health like I talked about earlier. When she is vulnerable, hitting her towards the wall would be ideal because you will do bonus damage. It makes it even better if you're facing up, so you can combine those attacks with your gun. The gun also has the capability to clear plants, to make it easier to move around. With the combination between having extra health, realizing I can't attack when she moves, and optimizing when I deal my damage, I was able to beat her. I think Caitlyn is a great early boss because she teaches the player about how this specific enemy type works. You'll see enemies with similar attributes later in the game. Now, let's get more in depth on the gameplay and my feelings about it. So how does gameplay actually work in Angeline Era? Talking about the non-combat elements first, we have the search mechanic. Basically, you press and hold the search button in areas you think are suspect in the overworld and while you're in levels. On the overworld, it's mainly used to find those levels. And inside those levels, searching is mainly used to teleport in random locations or progress. Money, items, and random events can also happen. Going back to the overworld, Tets can get a mount to move faster on certain tiles. This would include the grass, forests, and even wheat fields. Tetsuya moves better on the main paths, and then mounts have the ability to find certain items on the overworld. Combat in Angeline Era is just as simple. To attack, all you have to do is move towards the enemy. Even if you might have to wait for the enemy to get tired, all you have to do is bump into everybody. You have other equipment as well that can help you in combat, such as alternative weapons, guns, and artifacts. Alternative weapons function in a similar manner to the base sword, but they will have a twist. The rapier was the one that you saw me use the most. But there are others like the spear and the dagger. The spear shoots a projectile when you bump into enemies and it will pierce through, while the dagger will give you more money when you backstab people. The gun, on the other hand, is a secondary weapon that only shoots up, so you cannot shoot horizontally or downward. To refill your ammo, you have to bump into enemies. No need to press R for reload. The gun has attachments that you can have that will give the gun bonus effects, such as pulling the enemy towards you, or causing an explosion when you're in point-blank range. And then there are the tertiary equipment, like the artifacts. They have a more limited resource compared to the gun. There is only a chance that you'll get a refill, and it will only give you 1 unit. The only way to conventionally heal in this game during a level would be picking up a health drop. Otherwise, you have to do it before you start the level. In other words, you have to eat at the mirror table. The gameplay loop will look something like this. You search for a suspicious area on the overworld, search the spot, and if you find a level, you'll have to play a travel minigame. These minigames can range in difficulty and length, and all obstacles have different mechanics. As I mentioned before, you can dodge in one of 4 directions, and you can attack monsters. But there will be some obstacles like the snake that you'll have to just wait it out. Once completed, you'll enter one of 2 types of levels. Levels with or without a scale. When you do beat a level, that gives you a scale, it'll open more parts of the world. The scales are important too because that's how you level up, and when you level up you get slightly more health and more damage. And there is a soft cap so the player cannot level past their problems. The ones that don't give you a scale are optional, but you can still get something of use in the level, such as equipment or money. There's also lore being a reward as well. When you start a level, you can prepare at the mirror table, but generally when you move forward, you cannot go back. So make sure you prepare properly. As I mentioned, Angeline Era is non-linear. The world isn't huge, but there are quite a few things to do. And I gotta say, I vibe with Angeline Era's game design. Variety is the main quality the developers did best with Angeline Era, and I mean, they had to be on point with this. Bumping into things is the primary way to interact with the world, and that could get stale. Bump action was an old combat system games used back in the day. While it was a remake, I did play the first Ys title, and I'll admit I got bored of shoulder bumping monsters. With that said, reviving an old archaic system like this gets bonus points from me. If we start with Tats, the addition of a gun, different weapons, and artifacts made combat a lot more engaging. Forcing the gun to only shoot upward was certainly a weird choice, however this means you cannot only rely on the gun. And of course the artifacts have a very limited use, with their resource having a decently small chance to drop from enemies. The alternative weapons also act differently than the base sword. We have a good foundation here for gameplay with variety, but you need the level design and different enemies as well, and it has that in spades. The levels in Angeline Era aren't long and don't overstay their welcome, and each one has a variety of different enemies and obstacles to get by. There are many different types of enemies you can't simply bump into, like the various bug dogs and the enemies that are like Caitlyn that need to be exhausted before attacking. Then completely separate from the combat stuff, we have moments like this. Moments like those give me a good laugh. The lack of a dodge was something I noticed, but I never really felt like it was needed. Honestly, just simply walking away from most attacks was a lot easier to do than I thought. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that I'm generally not into large open world games, but the size of this one wasn't so bad. And when you do complete the game, it does encourage you to go back in time so you can explore a lot more after you completed it. The player can also replay the game on a harder mode. Specifically, this harder difficulty changes the way some of the tricks are in the game. What about the presentation of Angeline Era? I love the aesthetic, and how would I describe that aesthetic or vibe of Angeline Era? Well, I would call it weird and dreamy. Starting with the visuals, we have low poly graphics. The way the low poly looks reminds me of something close to the Dreamcast, maybe N64 because of how smooth it is and how it uses its colors, but it's not exactly one-to-one. I think it's more of a style of its own. While it isn't shocking, I enjoy the visuals as I'm a low poly enjoyer, but I'll admit it's the audio that is my favorite part of the game. The audio helps with the weird and dreamy vibe I love so much. My favorite track in Angeline Era, hands down, has to be the cave theme, and I do know the track is called Lovely Cavern Hop. This track can actually be heard in the demo, so I pretty much declared it as being my favorite without playing the whole thing when it came out much later. Now, I would say a close second would be the Karst Pavement track, but I'm specifically talking about the energetic version you get inside the levels. Just because I can easily pick my favorite tracks, that doesn't mean everything else is bad, as they all complete the weird and dreamy vibe, and sometimes weird and nightmarish. Oddly enough, I can't seem to pinpoint a weakness here. Everything, even the sound effects, were great. Although when getting to the writing of Angeline Era, I feel kinda weird. Mixed even. The premise of Angeline Era can be summarized like this. Tetsuya Kinoshita was called to the island of Era by an angel in his dreams to obtain the 9 Baicones. These Baicones will help bring the new world into a new era and save the island. And that's pretty much it on the surface. I mentioned before how the game has a weird and dreamy vibe, but what helps with that is the writing. You have fantastical creatures like angels and fae sitting right next to terms like the United States Army, which is what Tets was a part of, and Christianity. This juxtaposition is a quality that I enjoyed. The game's writing balances lightheartedness and melancholy well too. What I'm mixed about is how the story plays out in the end. Without spoilers, I'm not a fan of massive reveals at the end that involve the player needing to do some optional content to understand the full picture. Not to say that it's bad storytelling, because it isn't. But let's say if the player goes through only what's required of them, they will not understand a whole lot about the main character. It's pretty telling when Tetsuya at the start of the game says it doesn't matter where he comes from. Other characters in the story tell us a lot more about Tetsuya than Tetsuya himself. Tetsuya's reaction to the NPC prying into his business gave me an idea of who Tetsuya is as a character, and this section is optional. I would prefer if more of that information was a part of the main story. Although, if you are willing to explore the game, this shouldn't be a problem. Overall, I can say I enjoyed Angeline Era. Despite how mixed I was when it came to the writing in the main story, I loved the gameplay and presentation. I think it's cool to see such an old combat system come back and get modernized. And of course, I love the music. If you are interested in playing Angeline Era yourself, you can get it on Steam for $24.99. If you played Angelina Era already, I have no idea what else you could play besides the rest of their catalog. Honestly, they have such a distinct flavor that cannot be replicated. Anyway, that's it from me. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.